How you doing, folks? Scott here with Dorsten Custom Firearms, coming back with you for the third installation of our trigger job, level 2 trigger job that we're doing. Today we're actually getting into polishing the trigger components. We're going to be working with the trigger, the hammer, the double action sear, cylinder stop, the rebound slide, the bolt, firing pin block or hammer block, and the hand. Now we will be installing a new cylinder stop and a new hand as part of the level 2 trigger job, but we're not going to deal with that today. I'm going to show you the polishing on the factory components, and then we'll get into fitting these parts because they do have to be fitted. We'll get into those on a later video. Okay. What we're going to be using, our Critex bits for most of the polishing. Then we're going to be going on to using the Power Custom jig to fine tune the single action sear, and then we're going to be doing, of course, a little cleanup. So yeah, let's get started. We don't need the frame today, so we're just going to get that out of the way. And bring it down here, get you a little closer view. There you go, that looks pretty good. Okay, so with the Critex bits, now we're only going to be using the fine Critex bits, okay? We're not going to go through each level. We're not trying to do a visually pleasing polish job. We are just trying to smooth up the components. And if we went through each level of one, we'd end up removing too much material, and that would do more damage than good. So we're just going to be using the fine. One pass is all we need. We don't need to go any further than that. Okay. Got all of our components laid out. Let's get started. We're going to start with the trigger. Now you'll remember from the last time, the trigger, we've already recontoured it and polished most of it. And we're just going to work on polishing the rest of it for the trigger job work. Okay? Okay, and we already have our fine Critex bit in there. Now we're going to polish up the sides because it's a contact point against the frame. And we're just going to blend in with the polish from the first part. And I like to do the full side. And when you do this, you'll be able to feel the difference from one side with the polish to the non-side, how the difference in how rough it is. Okay. Pay a little bit closer attention to the casting marks areas over there and around the hole. There will be burrs there sometimes, and you'll just want to knock those down because that can be a contact point. And then a little bit up here on the side, just like that. So this is what we're going for. Again, we're not going for an aesthetically pleasing polish job because this isn't part of the exterior of the gun where somebody's going to see it. We're just going for a functionality polish job. Okay. There's one side. Repeat for the other side. And again, anywhere there's a casting mark or there's been a cut there, go over that a few times. Make sure you get any burrs off. That'll rub you the wrong way and give you a rougher trigger job. Okay, get you in a little closer. All right. So now we're going to tackle the top of the sear, the top of the trigger here. So the double action sear is at rest on here, just like that. and it's going to push up and do a transfer to this other part. So we're going to polish this so it's nice and smooth. Now when you're coming over this side, don't go over too far, because we don't want to, this is the single action sear engagement right here where my thumb's at. And you don't want to go over that with the Krytex bit, you want to save that for the stone. So avoid that area there. Okay, and then just the front area here. Okay, this area right here. We're going to give that just a little polish. We're not going to take too much off of it because we don't want to remove any material. And that controls the bolt stop. It goes in like that. Okay. So we're just going to give that a couple of quick little hits. Mostly just rub, taking the corners off of it. Not too much. Don't get crazy with it. You don't need much. Okay. And a little bit on top just to clean up any casting marks. Like this one, you can see it's got a nice little casting mark right there. Clean that up a little bit. Yeah, that's an ugly one. Okay, that's the trigger. I'm going to switch over to the hammer. And we're going to do the same things. Now on the hammer, I don't polish up into here because that's all going to be above the frame, so I just kind of leave that at the same factory finish. It's not going to affect the trigger job at all, leaving that alone. I just pay attention down here below this line. This is where most of your contact points are going to be. This is where most of your rubs are going to be. Okay. There you go. Just like that. Yeah. Other side. Okay. On the back here, I kind of take these two little corners off. And the reason being is because I've actually seen guns where it has a drag mark from those. They'll get a burr on them or something, so I just polish the corners off of them. You won't be able to see it on the outside, so you don't have to worry about the way it looks. But that's there. Okay. Now, the actual trigger component, this little ledge right here, let me get something to point at it with. You want to avoid this right here at all costs. You don't want to alter that at all. It's a very small step, and that's where your single action is. And if you try to alter that, most likely what's going to happen is you're going to have you're going to have hammer push off, and it won't hold it steadily enough. So avoid that area there. But we are going to come down here to the bottom side of it, and we're going to polish that. Okay. See there? Alright, and we're going to polish the top of this. And polish the back side of this. And on the ramp area. And the same thing on the front of the ramp. Okay, so now you can see we got all the areas there polished. We're going to come up to the top side, and again, we're avoiding the ledge right here, but we are going to come in and polish the top side right here. Okay, I'm just going to give that a little bit of a polish. Okay, there you go. So right in there. So you can see that I'm not taking too many passes off of that. You know, it doesn't take much just to get the rough texture down. And that's all you're doing. Remember, this isn't for aesthetics, this is for feel. So you're just going with a, you know, clean feel trigger. So this is the double action sear. So what I'll do here is I'll polish this front face, because when the trigger's returning, it rubs against the front face. And I'll just go all the way to the top just because it's more uniform. I mean, I say it's not for aesthetics, but you know, sometimes uniformity looks good. So, yeah, your front face. Okay, now under here, you can, when you're looking at these, you'll see, and I'm just going to kind of rotate it to see if you can catch it on the video, that there's a couple of different angles there. And you kind of want to keep those there. So we're just going to do some really light passes, just to polish them up a little bit. You don't want to take too much material off of there, because you can end up with a little bit of a slop in the trigger. And in fact, that's why we're actually going to be replacing this component with a new one. And I'll explain to you why we do that when I start fitting that one and what that's going after. I'd like to go after the back of it just a little. No particular reason, just a little bit of overkill. Now, I do go after one side, and it's the side that'll be against the hammer. Okay, so it's going to rub in there. So I'll polish one side of this thing, if I can get a hold of it. Because that will be a contact point. Okay, and there you go. That's the double action sear. Move on to the hand. The hand is a different type of steel on these things. It is stamped. It's, you know, I'm not sure what it's made out of, if it's a casting or what, but it is a different type of stainless steel. It's a little harder than the rest. You can see the stamping mark there. Okay. But we're still going to polish it up, and you'll still increase how smooth it is. And I'm going to get the front of it, because this is a contact point as well. It's contacting the frame as it moves. Okay. So when I'm coming in here, I'm also polishing the underside of the hook. And what that is when you polish that, that's going to help you with the trigger return, because it rubs against the ratchet as it returns, and having it a little smoother will reduce the friction and speed up the time that it takes to reset it. Okay. Now, when coming up to the top here, you'll notice that it's like really rough from the casting and from the machine work at the factory. But you really don't want to take too much off of here. Just a couple of little passes. Because if you take too much, you can mess up the timing. And again, it's not even a problem for this one because we're replacing this piece. But, you know, if you're not replacing this piece, and even like when we do the new one, we need to watch out for that. Okay, and the front here, I almost recommend you don't do this unless you've got experience. I do it, but I just take a couple of quick, 1, 2, that's it, just like that. Just a couple of little hits, that's it. Don't take any more off than that, because you don't want to mess up the timing of the gun. Okay, that part's done. The rebound, okay, this is where you get the most resistance in when it comes to friction, is in this rebound. It kind of moves back and forth more than any other piece, and there's just a lot of surface area. So I'm going to polish all sides of this thing. Now you can do all this with a stone if you desire to. Being a gunsmith, we always got to think about time and, you know, how much you're getting paid for the job and getting it done in the most efficient way possible. So, you know, that's why I take the Dremel tool and do it like this. It's a lot faster. It saves me a lot of time. And it doesn't make any difference in the performance of the part. So, but if you want to do it with a stone, by all means, go right ahead. Okay. On the front here, these two corners, two edges, again, they will gouge sometimes, so I just kind of take those off. Polish them over. Okay, now on the top here, there's more contact point with the hammer along in here. I'm going to polish the front. Now, on this part right here, I'm going to hit that edge, give that corner just a little bit of a rounding. Not take it off, we're just rounding it a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to hit the top. And then we're going to hit the back. Okay. So you can see there. And on the front. That's all you need. Okay. The cylinder stop. So there's a couple areas that are real easy. This one right here. You can already see that there's a mark there from where it rubs. So we're just going to polish that. Come on the corner and just break the edge a little. Don't remove too much. Just a few passes is all you need. I'm going to hit the sides. And that's just going to let it, move a little bit freer. And again, this is a component that we're replacing in this package. But in a level 1 package, we don't. So this is the polishing that we do in a level 1 package. Okay. Okay. Alright, now in this part up here, we want to be real careful. Now going across the top here is not that big of a deal, because that goes into the cuts on the cylinder. So we just want that to be nice and polished. Give it something smooth to glide against, because it does rub as it rotates. And it's not a critical dimension. Okay, but there is a critical dimension on the width of it. It has to be wide enough to lock it into place tightly, but not too wide that it doesn't allow it to move freely. So it's already been fit from the factory. What we're going to do is just lightly polish the sides, just a few passes, few light passes, because we don't want to change the dimension at all. We just want to make it smoother. Okay, so you can see just lightly polished, and that's all that means. Just the two sides, the ramp area there and that area. Okay. The hammer block, this is just, we're just polishing this just because it does move along the hammer. It is not a critical dimension, and in my opinion it's not even critical to have it. The double action only Smith & Wessons don't have this part. And honestly, the rebound slide does the exact same job that this one does, just in a different way. So it's like it's a superfluous piece, you know. And oh man, that burned. I am not telling you to go remove it, because it is a safety feature that Smith & Wesson decides is necessary. But, you know, like I said, it's a redundant one. It's a redundant safety piece. And we're just going to polish the surfaces. If you turn your gun into a double action only gun, then by all means remove this. You don't need it. This is only for single action. Okay, that part's done. Alright, and the bolts. So the bolt we're mostly looking for, now this one, there's a couple of small areas where you can see it's already rubbing against the hammer. It's not bad as far as these go. I've seen much worse. But we're going to polish those areas. Just to get, so if it is going to rub, it's going to be against something smooth, and hopefully we'll take enough off that it just won't touch it at all, which that's the ideal way to have it, is that it won't touch at all. So I'm just going to do that. We're going to take any hard corners off of it, and anywhere where it slides along in the groove in the action, we're going to polish that. Just a word of caution when you're doing this, these little parts do tend to get very hot. Okay. Okay. That's the end of the quick and easy polishing part. Alright. Now we're going to be dealing with the single action sear. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of Dicam on here so that you can see the contrast in what we're doing. Okay. Dicam is a layout fluid. It comes in a couple of different colors, mostly red and blue. I have the blue, and we're just going to put some on the sear area so that as I'm working, you can kind of see what's going on. It's kind of a very small, fine area, so it's hard to see. It's kind of dry. Now, when you're doing this, the Power Custom jig comes with the instructions, and I always recommend having these out as you're working. Okay. One, it gives you the basic instructions on how these work if you want to make the changes. You don't always have it all memorized, so you want to have something to reference. And it makes sure that you have this in the jig properly, because it has a diagram of how each triggers. Okay, and we're dealing with the Smith & Wesson KLN, and then this one's the KLN. I also have the J, but that's how that orientates in this. Okay. Now, in the instructions, it says the elevation of the backside here starts at a reference point of 20 clicks up from the bottom, and I already have it set there. On these ones, now the sear engagements are adjusted by either raising or lowering it depending on the type of trigger. On this trigger, the rear portion is raised if you want to lower the trigger pull from the reference point. I have never needed to move it off of the reference point. The reference point gives you a really nice, crisp, clean trigger pull. So I recommend just staying at the reference point and not messing around with that, okay? So I'm going to bring you in this way so you just get a front view. Okay, so the 2 pins here. One of the pins goes through the hole for the hand, okay? The other pin rests against this part right here, okay? So you just insert that in there. Okay, now on the top here, there's a reference mark that says 0, and that makes sure it's orientated properly. Don't mess around with trying to change the angle of that by trying to improve the trigger pull. Like you think, well, if you do 2 degrees off of the 0 point, you get a better. Don't do that. Just stay at the 0 point and adjust this. That's how the device is designed. So, don't go getting creative. Okay, now once it's in here, you need to make sure it stays clamped. And I have just a small C-clamp here, and I've brazed a piece of brass on here so that I don't mar the piece at all. Okay, so let me just put that on, tighten it down just a little bit, and that keeps it from moving when it's in there. Okay, now there's 3 stones that you generally use for this. I only use 2 of them most of the time. So there is the coarse India stone, and that's the brown one here. Okay, I don't use this one for this type of work too often, unless I have a trigger that is really out of whack. Okay, I usually start with the medium stone and then move up to a fine. Okay, so we're going to start with the medium. We're going to use a little bit of gun oil. I'm going to put some gun oil on the roller, and then I'm going to put some gun oil on the stone. Okay, and that's all you need there. And now you'll polish. You just move it back and forth, real nice and easy. And no, this is just riveting television, isn't it? Okay, we're going to stop it, and we're going to inspect the sear engagement. So you can see where the dicum has been polished off. Okay, and that lets you see how square it is. Okay, and that's what you're doing, is you're trying to make sure it's square. So it needs, and they always need a little work there. You know, I've never had a factory one that came out of the factory where it was just perfectly square. It just doesn't happen. You know, mass production parts. If we go to the level 2 extreme trigger job in the listing, you'll see I actually replaced the trigger and the hammer with aftermarket ones, and those ones are almost always just straight as an arrow. You can't beat them. But they do add a considerable cost to the trigger job. Now, when you're doing this, be careful where you're putting your pressure. If you're putting your pressure over at one end, you're going to be cutting harder on that side than you are on the other. So I recommend just, you know, keeping your finger in the middle, using moderate pressure. You know, you're not trying to push down on it real hard. You're not, you know, you're not filing. You're just polishing. You use it, let the stone do the work, and just go back and forth real even. Okay, we see that starting to square up now. Okay. And it is getting considerably sharper. You can feel it on your finger. You'll be able to feel it on your finger that it's getting sharper. Okay. I'm going to switch to the white stone and just give it a nice shiny finish. And it's going to be really smooth. Now you can, with, you know, as the Smith & Wessons get older, this component wears out, and that's when you'll get problems like you'll be resting your finger, you'll have it in single action cocked, and you'll rest your finger on it and it decocks on you, and it's not firing, it's actually decocking the gun. Or you cock it and you can actually push the hammer off, and it's not holding it properly. You can use this to actually fix that problem by recutting that sear if it's not too badly gone. A lot of times if it's past the heat treats, it's pretty much done. But if it's not past the heat treats and it just needs some cleaning up, you can save a lot of those triggers just doing this. Okay, let's take a look. Oh yeah, that's real nice. So there you go. Alright, that's it. That's the actual trigger work of this project, okay? So, alright. Again, on a later one, I don't know if it'll be next, but at least on a later one, we're going to be fitting the aftermarket cylinder stop and the aftermarket hand. This from Power Custom, a cylinder and slide. They both make good components. We're moving into some of the other more interesting action tuning aspects on the next video, I think, and then we'll come back to fitting those the following week. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this is being giving good information for you. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. I will remind you that this is not everything I do in my trigger jobs. I don't give away all my secrets. You know, it's kind of an industry thing. But this is kind of general stuff that's already out there that I'm just kind of fine-tuning and giving you a little bit better perspective of. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is Scott with Dorsten Custom Firearms, your friendly neighborhood gunsmith. Tune in again next week, and have a good time, and thanks for watching.